trying to do their jobs. These criminals will be arrested. Welcome to the programme. We start this hour in Los Angeles. President Trump has ordered 2,000 National Guards into the city to counter escalating protests in a predominantly Hispanic district of the Californian city. It comes after a second day of clashes between residents of Paramount and border immigration officers trying to implement President Trump's policy to deport unauthorised migrants. Now, federal ICE agents used tear gas, flashbangs and batons to disperse the protesters. The White House border policy chief has gone to Los Angeles to personally supervise the operation, during which more than 40 migrants were arrested on Saturday. He warned that there would be zero tolerance of any violence or damage to private property. The mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, said ICE was sowing terror in America's second largest city. While announcing the order deploying the National Guard, the White House said the administration has a zero-tolerance policy for criminal behaviour and violence, especially when that violence is aimed at law enforcement officers trying to do their jobs. These criminals will be arrested and swiftly brought to justice. The Commander-in-Chief will ensure the laws of the United States are executed fully and completely. Well, I want to show you some of the latest pictures from Los Angeles, and they come in the last hour. They show law enforcement officers wearing protective equipment, including helmets, coming out of the Federal Detention Center. Now, several of them fire tear gas towards the protesters, and it also appears that some form of explosive stun projectiles, which are often described as flashbangs, are thrown. Now, this came after the LAPD issued dispersal orders in some parts of the city. They had said that the use of less lethal munitions had been authorised, saying they can cause pain and discomfort. Well, the protesters then did seem to pull back, and then law enforcement officers formed a line and they walked down the centre of the road. You can still see those bangs going off, clearing the area. They were trying to establish a cordon. More tear gas and bang projectiles were thrown. Now, officers say multiple people have been detained for failing to disperse after multiple warnings. Well, in the last half an hour, President Trump has posted on his Truth Social platform. Let me read to you what he said. He said, "Great job by the National Guard in Los Angeles. After 2 days of violence, clashes and unrest, we have an incompetent governor and mayor who were, as usual, just look at how they handled the fires, and now they're very slow permitting disaster. Federal permitting is complete, unable to handle the task." He goes on to say these radical left protests by instigators and often paid troublemakers will not be tolerated. He also says, from now on, masks will not be allowed to be worn at protests. What do these people have to hide and why, he says. Again, thank you to the National Guard for a job well done. Well, we at the moment can't yet verify whether the National Guard have actually deployed to LA. But earlier, one of the protesters described why they had come out onto the streets.
Purpose was to peacefully tell them to not take our people. We overheard, it's been shared, that ICE had came to our towns. We're just here living, working. They stopped at Home Depot where they know that people are undocumented. So us as a community have came here to try to make peace so that they don't make families separate one another. And what did they do? They just started to attack us. We were peaceful, and all of a sudden, they started throwing bombs at us. I know a lot of us just unified together on the other side to not let the bus that was coming in with all the police, and then instead of them peacefully telling us to back up, they just started pepper spraying us. There's a lot of women out there that have pepper spray.
Well, let's put the area where this is happening into a little context for you. Now, Los Angeles, of course, is a huge sprawling city with many different districts, with some of them predominantly populated by particular communities. Now, the Paramount district is about 15 miles inland from the Pacific Ocean and its beaches, and even further from areas like downtown LA, Santa Monica and Beverly Hills. It is a predominantly Latino district, and despite the name, Hollywood's Paramount Studios are located more than 20 miles away. Well, our reporter in Los Angeles is Reagan Morris. She brought us this update.
The area I am, there's a very large law enforcement presence. A lot of the protesters have either dispersed or moved on to other areas, but we can still hear flashbangs going off in the distance, and there were just some fireworks going off, one of the neighbors setting them off. But it's still quite tense. And just about an hour ago, we were walking from one area to another, and somebody threw a Molotov cocktail over the fence where we were, and the LA County sheriffs came rushing out. The guy's leg, actually, their pants caught on fire briefly as he tried to stamp it out, and they were trying to find out who was throwing Molotov cocktails at them. A flashbang accidentally went off next to the police, which made a lot of the protesters laugh, but then they just came in aggressively and moved people out. But we can hear it's still going on, and it moves around. And we're near an area where earlier today, a few hours ago, there was a very large presence of ICE agents, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, in unmarked cars. And we've been told by some locals that there are factories around here where some migrants are still locked inside, afraid to come out. And that's something we've heard not just over the last few days in LA County, but over the last few months, that a lot of immigrants who do not have legal documents to live here are living in fear, very real fear of being deported.
Now, LA is what's known as a sanctuary city. Just explain what that means.
Well, it's not just LA. Most of California is a sanctuary, and it means that local law enforcement are not meant to cooperate with federal immigration officials. So if an undocumented immigrant, illegal immigrant, was arrested for shoplifting, when they get out of jail, the local authorities are not meant to tell Immigration and Customs Enforcement that, hey, this guy, you can pick him up and deport him, whereas that would happen in most places in Texas. So a lot of lines are being crossed the last few days, though, at least the perception of it, as people see local law enforcement fanned out on the streets after they were called in to help Immigration and Customs federal officials to protect them. But locally, a lot of people just think they blend it into one and see it as cooperation and targeting the immigrant community.
How do you think President Trump ordering in the National Guard is likely to go down? We've already heard from Governor Newsom saying that it is inflammatory and will only escalate tensions.
I think that is what the governor has said, and that's what a lot of the local leaders are saying, and people we've spoken to here today, that that would not be well received in a lot of neighborhoods, especially immigrant. It's where I am in Paramount. It's more than 80% Hispanic. It's a very big immigrant community, so it will probably not be very well received. We've heard from our partners at CBS that just in the last hour or so, that Governor Newsom and President Trump spoke on the phone for about 40 minutes. We don't know the contents of that phone call, but maybe something has changed throughout that. We don't know.
And this, of course, is all because of President Trump's policy to deport unauthorized migrants.
Yes, that is part of the policy, whereas California policy is more often to protect migrants, whether they have legal documents or not. California is the fourth biggest economy in the world, and a lot of the agriculture sectors in particular, there's a lot of migrants working in those jobs that don't necessarily have legal status in the United States and California, and the economy really relies on them. So they do try and protect law-abiding migrants without proper paper, many of whom pay taxes and go to work every day.
Reagan Morris in Los Angeles. Well, one witness to the protest that has been going on there over the last few hours spoke to a local reporter at the scene about what they had seen.
We were at a stoplight on the other side of Paramount, right? Over there in Alondra. When out of nowhere, in the stop, immigration agents, ICE, all that came, they came dressed up in all their military gear, and they stopped traffic. When they stopped traffic, we started noticing, and I told my girl, that's immigration right there. What they started doing was they went in front of a business, a negocio, and they started raiding it. They started bringing people out in vans. Once they started doing that, that's when everybody knew, what was going on. And everybody was there in the traffic jam. Everybody, right? You're stuck in your car, in your vehicle. When they saw us looking at them doing all that, that's when they started throwing tear gas. Everybody was still in their vehicles. As soon as one of the tear gas.
You said who was behind you?
Behind us, there was a woman and her young daughter. She was around 13. I kept in touch with them, and as we speak, she's in the hospital because the tear gas bomb hit her right in the face. They were right behind us, taking notice that we're not there to protest. We were stuck at the light, right? But we're witnessing everything happening right in front of our eyes. The tear gas explodes. They come out crying out of their vehicle, and they can't breathe. They're literally on the ground, right? I have the video, I have the footage, right?
And so what do you and your girlfriend do at that point?
We get off, and we see everybody else getting off to record. Peacefully, we do not throw anything at them. We're not yelling at them. We're just recording what's going on because people deserve to know the truth. This is why you guys are here. This is because, these things need to be documented. This is what they wanted. They wanted people to riot. They wanted the people to start fireworks. They wanted the people to start burning out. Why? Because this is the effect. So they can make us look bad. So they can make us seem that we're the ones causing this, that we started it.
That's Fernando Delgado, a witness to the protest. Well, Rachel Uranga is the immigration reporter at the LA Times. She told us about the latest situation in Los Angeles.
Less than an hour ago, I can still hear some of the shots that were ringing out in downtown Los Angeles. There is some clashes going on in Paramount, which is a largely Hispanic community, working class Latino community in Los Angeles. And there's also another small confrontation in downtown Los Angeles, just outside of the Federal Detention Center, where immigrants who have been picked up in raids this week or at courthouses are being held. Los Angeles is a notoriously blue area, and it has a really heavy immigrant population. While there's people here that do think that if you've overstayed your visa or if you aren't here legally, you should face the law. There's a lot of people out here who support the immigrant community and who are tied to it. And just to tell you how deeply embedded California is with this community, it's like 1 out of every 2 children are immigrants. It's a really high number that live and in mixed families. One of the family members has a status that they're not here legally. Los Angeles has turned into ground zero as a test for the limits of Trump's immigration policy. I mean, here, this economy really depends on immigrant labor and on communities that are tied to immigrants. So, the Trump administration has really had some high profile raids here, and it's really tested people. Some people would say, and some politicians have said, it's provoked people. And I think a lot of the politicians are not happy, the local politicians, Newsom certainly, about them sending over the National Guard, that they feel sort of an overblown show of force.
Now at 11, chaos erupts as armed federal agents conduct sweeping immigration raids across Los Angeles. Good evening, I'm Micah Ullman.
And I'm Cher Calvin. Dozens were arrested during the sweep as angry protesters clashed with federal agents on the streets of downtown LA.
The surprise raids took place this morning, but the chaos continues into the night as hundreds face off with police. It all began at a Home Depot and then in LA's Garment District as federal agents used flashbang grenades to clear the protesters who were trying to disrupt the operation, targeting undocumented workers.
We have live team coverage of the raids and the protests. Lindsay Pena has reaction from the immigrant community. But we begin with Chris Wolf live near the Metropolitan Detention Center where the arrestees are being held tonight. Chris.
Yeah, Cher and Micah, protesters keep shifting locations around government buildings here in downtown LA. We have heard continuous sirens and clamor and the buzz of LAPD choppers overhead with spotlights cutting through the night sky. Police and FBI agents are keeping protesters away from the Roybal Federal Building and the Metropolitan Detention Center, buildings that were earlier vandalized and spray painted. Friday night, downtown LA, as an army of federal and local law enforcement personnel guards government buildings, including a detention center where suspected violators of immigration laws are being held. It's a tense cap-off to an explosive day. Tear gas, flashbangs, angry crowds, and heavily armed and armored U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents marked a volatile Friday in the heart of Los Angeles during a series of immigration sweeps. Agents swarmed into at least 3 locations looking for suspected immigration law violators. The blowback was fast and fierce, with some protesters jumping in front of law enforcement vehicles to prevent them from moving.
They did need to bring in some backup here.
KTLA was in the air and on the ground during the immigration enforcement firestorm. Footage shows federal agents chasing people in the parking lot of a Home Depot in the Westlake district, not far from downtown Los Angeles. Individuals often gather at home improvement stores looking for temporary work opportunities with customers. Another raid unfolded at a clothing store along Town Avenue in the Fashion District, where agents hauled off multiple workers in handcuffs, loading them into vans, as other agents in riot gear clashed with onlookers in what could be described as a tense standoff. Immigration rights advocates joined the showdown, using megaphones at times to speak to garment industry workers, telling them to avoid signing any paperwork or speaking to federal agents. The activity is the latest roundup in the Trump administration's unparalleled crackdown on illegal immigration. Another ICE raid Friday targeted what appeared to be a clothing warehouse or possibly corporate headquarters building in the South Los Angeles area.
Since this happened today and no one was notified, will this happen again tomorrow? Will it be next week? Will it be next month? It's that sense of uncertainty, fear, and anxiety that is created in our city when this happens.
One demonstrator shouted at authorities tonight, quote, This is day one of the war. Reporting live in downtown Los Angeles, Chris Wolf, KTLA 5 News.
Chris, thank you. The sweeping raids igniting furious protests and contentious standoffs between activists and ICE agents and police. The detention of at least 45 individuals, including a union president, is the latest chapter in President Trump's escalating immigration crackdown.
Lindsay Pena live in downtown LA with reaction to the arrest from people who have loved ones caught up in the chaos. Lindsay.
Yeah, that's right, Micah and Cher. Now, we're right across the street from the federal building where that rally and protest started hours ago this afternoon, and there is still activity taking place tonight. You can hear people honking, and another crowd has gathered just across the street right now. We did talk to someone who says that her husband was caught up in those raids earlier today, and now she is wondering what will happen to her family.
We have elected officials at every level of government.
Hundreds gathered outside the federal building on Los Angeles Street Friday afternoon following ICE raids at several locations earlier in the day. Among those in the crowd was Dulce Camacho, who tells KTLA her husband was taken into custody near a Home Depot in Westlake.
I was able to see him for 10 minutes. He said they haven't gave him anything to eat. They made him sign some papers. You know, he speaks some English, but he doesn't read it well. So I know he doesn't know what he signed.
Originally from Mexico, she says he's been in the country for 13 years and is undocumented. Now she has to tell her two daughters their father won't be home tonight.
I explained to her when we picked her up from school with my sister, you know, that I've been talking to her every day about this, so she kind of knows. I told her I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to be okay. You know, we don't have a big family, but we have my sister, my brother-in-law, and, you know, with that, we're going to be okay and stick together and try to get him. If he is able to get released here, then that's great. If not, then, you know, work hard and try to see how we could keep the family together.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Also taken into custody today was SEIU California President David Huerta. In a statement on X, U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli said he was, quote, arrested for interfering with federal officers and will face arraignment in federal court on Monday.
Had to be taken to the hospital, and he's being detained for exercising his First Amendment rights. So we're asking for the immediate release of our President David Huerta.
Local elected officials who spoke at today's rally, like Assemblymember Mark Gonzalez, say they will fight for the people affected by the raids.
We're making sure that what they're doing in this building, how are they detaining folks, that they have full rights. And we're telling people you need to know your rights.
Now, Sharon, Micah, back out here live. I want to direct your attention to protesters and law enforcement here at the entrance to the 101 South. We are at Los Angeles and Aliso Street. There was a confrontation just moments ago, but it does look like those protesters are moving on further down Los Angeles. Again, we will keep you updated on what's happening here downtown throughout the night and tomorrow morning on KTLA. For now, we are live downtown. Lindsay Pena, KTLA 5 News. Back to you.
Lindsay, thank you. And from the ground to the air, let's go to Gil Levis over downtown LA in Sky 5. Gil.
Cher and Micah, this is the small group that Lindsay was just talking about a dozen, the last of the protesters here leaving the area. They were just up against the California Highway Patrol, who have opened all on-ramps and off-ramps to the 101 freeway here, but that small group now moving north of the freeway at this point. They were over on Temple and Los Angeles Street, which is now cleared, but the federal officers moved over there, and we're monitoring that group, that small group here. They marched all the way up here to the CHP that were here on Aliso, but they have moved on since. That's the latest overhead up in Sky 5. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Okay, Gil, thank you. Now at 11, chaos erupts as armed federal agents conduct sweeping immigration raids across Los Angeles. Good evening, I'm Micah Ullman.
And I'm Cher Calvin. Dozens were arrested during the sweep as angry protesters clashed with federal agents on the streets of downtown LA.
The surprise raids took place this morning, but the chaos continues into the night as hundreds face off with police. It all began at a Home Depot and then in LA's Garment District as federal agents used flashbang grenades to clear the protesters who were trying to disrupt the operation, targeting undocumented workers.
We have live team coverage of the raids and the protests. Lindsay Pena has reaction from the immigrant community. But we begin with Chris Wolf live near the Metropolitan Detention Center where the arrestees are being held tonight. Chris.
Yeah, Cher and Micah, protesters keep shifting locations around government buildings. Here in downtown LA, we have heard continuous sirens and clamor and the buzz of LAPD choppers overhead with spotlights cutting through the night sky. Police and FBI agents are keeping protesters away from the Roybal Federal Building and the Metropolitan Detention Center, buildings that were earlier vandalized and spray painted. Friday night, downtown LA, as an army of federal and local law enforcement personnel guards government buildings, including a detention center where suspected violators of immigration laws are being held. It's a tense cap-off to an explosive day. Tear gas, flashbangs, angry crowds, and heavily armed and armored U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents marked a volatile Friday in the heart of Los Angeles during a series of immigration sweeps. Agents swarmed into at least 3 locations looking for suspected immigration law violators. The blowback was fast and fierce, with some protesters jumping in front of law enforcement vehicles to prevent them from moving.
They did need to bring in some backup here.
KTLA was in the air and on the ground during the immigration enforcement firestorm. Footage shows federal agents chasing people in the parking lot of a Home Depot in the Westlake district, not far from downtown Los Angeles. Individuals often gather at home improvement stores looking for temporary work opportunities with customers. Another raid unfolded at a clothing store along Town Avenue in the Fashion District, where agents hauled off multiple workers in handcuffs, loading them into vans, as other agents in riot gear clashed with onlookers in what could be described as a tense standoff. Immigration rights advocates joined the showdown, using megaphones at times to speak to garment industry workers, telling them to avoid signing any paperwork or speaking to federal agents. The activity is the latest roundup in the Trump administration's unparalleled crackdown on illegal immigration. Another ICE raid Friday targeted what appeared to be a clothing warehouse or possibly corporate headquarters building in the South Los Angeles area.
Since this happened today and no one was notified, will this happen again tomorrow? Will it be next week? Will it be next month? It's that sense of uncertainty, fear, and anxiety that is created in our city when this happens.
One demonstrator shouted at authorities tonight, quote, "This is day one of the war." Reporting live in downtown Los Angeles, Chris Wolf, KTLA 5 News.
Chris, thank you. The sweeping raids igniting furious protests and contentious standoffs between activists and ICE agents and police. The detention of at least 45 individuals, including a union president, is the latest chapter in President Trump's escalating immigration crackdown.
Lindsay Pena live in downtown LA with reaction to the arrest from people who have loved ones caught up in the chaos. Lindsay.
Yeah, that's right, Micah and Cher. Now, we're right across the street from the federal building where that rally and protest started hours ago this afternoon, and there is still activity taking place tonight. You can hear people honking, and another crowd has gathered just across the street right now. We did talk to someone who says that her husband was caught up in those raids earlier today, and now she is wondering what will happen to her family.
We have elected officials at every level of government.
Hundreds gathered outside the federal building on Los Angeles Street Friday afternoon following ICE raids at several locations earlier in the day. Among those in the crowd was Dulce Camacho, who tells KTLA her husband was taken into custody near a Home Depot in Westlake.
I was able to see him for 10 minutes. He said they haven't gave him anything to eat. They made him sign some papers. You know, he speaks some English, but he doesn't read it well. So I know he doesn't know what he signed.
Originally from Mexico, she says he's been in the country for 13 years and is undocumented. Now she has to tell her 2 daughters their father won't be home tonight.
I explained to her when we picked her up from school with my sister, you know, that I've been talking to her every day about this, so she kind of knows. I told her I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to be okay. You know, we don't have a big family, but we have my sister, my brother-in-law, and, you know, with that, we're going to be okay and stick together and try to get him. If he is able to get released here, then that's great. If not, then, you know, work hard and try to see how we could keep the family together.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Also taken into custody today was SEIU California President David Huerta. In a statement on X, U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli said he was, quote, arrested for interfering with federal officers and will face arraignment in federal court on Monday.
Had to be taken to the hospital, and he's being detained for exercising his First Amendment rights. So we're asking for the immediate release of our President David Huerta.
Local elected officials who spoke at today's rally, like Assemblymember Mark Gonzalez, say they will fight for the people affected by the raids.
We're making sure that what they're doing in this building, how are they detaining folks, that they have full rights. And we're telling people you need to know your rights.
Now, Sharon, Micah, back out here live. I want to direct your attention to protesters and law enforcement here at the entrance to the 101 South. We are at Los Angeles and Aliso Street. There was a confrontation just moments ago, but it does look like those protesters are moving on further down Los Angeles. Again, we will keep you updated on what's happening here downtown throughout the night and tomorrow morning on KTLA. For now, we are live downtown. Lindsay Pena, KTLA 5 News. Back to you.
Lindsay, thank you. And from the ground to the air, let's go to Gil Levis over downtown LA in Sky 5. Gil.
Cher and Micah, this is the small group that Lindsay was just talking about a dozen, the last of the protesters here leaving the area. They were just up against the California Highway Patrol, who have opened all on-ramps and off-ramps to the 101 freeway here, but that small group now moving north of the freeway at this point. They were over on Temple and Los Angeles Street, which is now cleared, but the federal officers moved over there, and we're monitoring that group, that small group here. They marched all the way up here to the CHP that were here on Aliso, but they have moved on since. That's the latest overhead up in Sky 5. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Okay, Gil, thank you. The
And joining me now here in the studio is Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal attorney, principal of Crisis X and Substack host at The Real Michael Cohen. He's also, of course, the author of the best-selling book, Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice Against His Critics. Welcome, my friend. Here's my first question to you. Do you believe Donald Trump when he says, I'm not thinking about Musk?
No. He is thinking about him, but not in a positive way. He's really angry because Elon Musk did the ultimate thing, which is to act out against the best interests of Donald Trump. It's disloyal in Donald's mind. And that to Donald is the worst offense that you could possibly do.
And I think it was just a week ago today that you were on and you predicted right after Musk was leaving the White House officially, ending his government service, if not months ago, when these two first started a bromance, you said, yeah, this is going to happen. There's going to be a big old fallout.
That bromance never had a chance of lasting. First of all, they're like two amped up hyenas, right? Dragging the carcass of some animal right out of the dirt, but neither of them wants to share the kill. That's the whole problem. You have one guy who's the most powerful man in the world, the other who is the richest man in the world. The guy with the power, of course, elected president, but Elon Musk has this false impression that he created the president, therefore he's entitled to something. It is really when your reporter was saying that it's a clash of massive egos, it most certainly is. And neither of them are going to back down. I mean, to watch Elon Musk say the things that he said was absolutely incredible. I can't imagine what was going through his mind at that time, but I can't also imagine what was going through Trump's mind as he responded, especially responding to somebody, considering they both own their own social media platforms, Truth Social versus X. On Truth Social, the Elon Musk post, it garnered 179 million views. 179 million. Trump's 172,000. I mean, there is a big difference in the size of the platform. So the Republican Party, the GOP, they're concerned that Elon has gone off the rail and that he's going to ultimately affect the 2026 midterm elections.
Can I just ask you, given your experience with Donald Trump, certainly in the past, when you look at Elon and he says, you know, I got this guy elected, and while there's reason to believe that that's not necessarily true, he did devote over $250 million into this campaign.
And don't forget his platform X, which is worth as much as the $250 million that he put in.
But did he do that? Have people done that in the past with Donald Trump with some sort of a expectation? Look, I'm going to support you. I'm expecting some kind of support in return.
Well, take a look at the entire cabinet. I mean, each and every one of the cabinet members, I should say each and every one, the vast majority of the cabinet members were all significant donors to the Trump campaign. That's how they ended up in the inner circle. There's always a quid pro quo with Trump. And that's something that everybody knows. You know,
but it goes one way, right? Loyalty? Only one way.
Loyalty with Donald Trump, as I always refer, is like First Avenue here in Manhattan. One way.
NBC's Kristen Welker reports that Trump allies are going after Musk, with Steve Bannon saying Trump should pull every contract, start major investigations immediately. Bannon also added, quote, thus spake the ketamine. I mean, it's a sign that Trump's allies are zeroing in on Musk's alleged drug use. Trump has said, Musk has said he took ketamine to treat depression. Bannon represents the MAGA base. So is revenge ultimately what they want?
Well, remember with Trump, it's always about distancing yourself first, disparaging, which is what his acolytes, his enablers are doing, and then denigrating them. And that's what he's doing. Don't think for a second that Steve Bannon is out there on his own saying these things. All of this is coordinated through the president. Not a person is going out there and acting on behalf of the president without at least his explicit knowledge and acceptance.
What, like a phone call? Like the two of them chat and say, hey, listen, I need you to do this? And
Sure. He calls up and he says, look, we're going to go against him. We have to go ahead and attack. We all know that based upon even Elon's own words that, he's a user of ketamine and other narcotics. Let's discredit him. Let's turn around and attack him to try to make sure that whatever it is that he says, that's just the rantings of a drug addict. That's the whole point. They all meet, they all get together, and they all parrot one another. As I always say, with Stalin, right? The more you repeat the lie, the more the lie becomes the truth. Well, what happens when it's actually factually accurate?
I spoke with Miles Taylor just a short time ago, years after working with Donald Trump during his first term. He has said that his life has been deeply, deeply affected by the actions that Donald Trump is taking against him in his second term. Do you see Trump letting go of this with Elon Musk? Could it simmer for a while and then he takes action? How do you see this playing out?
No. Elon went way too low in those posts, especially the ones in regard to Jeffrey Epstein. And I was on an earlier MSNBC program where I absolutely refute having any knowledge whatsoever. And again, I was as close to Trump for a decade and a half in regard to the Epstein. That doesn't make me a supporter taking the knee for Trump. What it does is it's expressing the truth. Let's concentrate on the things right now that matter. Now, I have Miles Taylor coming on my podcast on Monday.
Great
and I spoke to him. Yeah, I spoke to him about the exact same things. He's been doxxed. I've been doxxed. He was swatted. I've been swatted. They swatted my parents in Florida. I mean, this is who the MAGA base is. And it's sad because this isn't the way American politics is supposed to run, that you should be fearful to speak truth to power. There are elected officials. They're not our kings.
Let me ask about something which I know is important to you because you are one of several co-authors, Michael, and it is on an op-ed in The Hill. And you've criticized President Biden's rejection of their pardons. You've been asking for reconsideration, calling for the system to be reformed. Are you taking sides with Trump against Biden because you were unsuccessful in securing a pardon from Biden? I mean, give me sort of the big picture of what you're going after here.
So the picture here is, and I think a lot of people who reported on it got it all wrong. If they really read the op-ed, what they need to understand is Jesse Jackson, myself, and several others authored this. And what we're saying is we worked very hard on these applications. It's not something you put together in a day or a weekend. Spent 4 or 5 months. For example, I have 7 letters from historical figures, 2 of the top constitutional lawyers in America, 2 members of Congress, 2 historical legal figures as well in the Nixon era, as well as an ethics czar who worked for 3 administrations. I wanted the right and the fair consideration for the application, not to just turn around and have it ignored, because it's not necessarily Biden. It's the people that were around him. So, yes, I don't believe that they showed these documents, mine, Jesse, who had 40 letters. I don't believe that this was really considered properly, which is to the president, who has that special power conferred to him in the Constitution. Absolutely. It's basically the hand of God. But where people are getting this wrong about me, this isn't necessarily about me. There's 70 million Americans who are right now affected by having the scarlet letter of felon next to their name. My sentence was 36 months. I'm already out for over 5 years.
You did your time?
I did my time. I have no restitution. Why do I have to carry the sentence that the judge imposed? Wasn't the lifetime sentence. And I believe that if Trump understands the policy that Jesse, myself, and others are trying to put forth, first of all, it affects 70 million Americans. I think he takes the Nobel Peace Prize for changing 70 million people.
Trump would get that, you think?
Yes, I believe he would. But more importantly, you know who else it affects? It affects him. He's a felon as well. He didn't do his time. He was commuted his sentence by the court. But he still carries the felony conviction name. He carries the same scarlet letter that Jesse Jackson Jr. and I do. By doing so, he would actually remove that scarlet letter from himself as well. So you don't have to be a felon for the rest of your life. And I believe that somebody like Trump, who is, let's say, not as under control by a group of individuals as the Biden administration was running, I think he's somebody who would potentially look at this type of policy. And again, it affects 70 million Americans.
Yeah. We'll see. Let us know what comes
Who
of
knows?
this. Yep, who knows? We will see, my friend. Thank you, Michael Cohen.
There has never been a standoff, feud, divorce, implosion, pick your word, quite like this. Billionaire versus billionaire, social media giant versus social media giant, social media owner versus owner, both of them experts, commanding attention on and offline. An opinion writer for the Washington Post says the Donald Trump-Elon Musk bromance was always doomed to fail. Quote, no relationship has room for more than one narcissist. This fact alone was probably terminal for the Trump-Musk marriage, but it did not help that the two billionaires are so much alike. Effective teams have complementary traits, not redundant ones. While Trump and Musk both specialize in bellicose social media, share flitting attention spans, and are standouts at shamelessness. But David Von Drehle, what do you really think? Well, as a soap opera, this has been a ratings bonanza, but the real-world implications are enormous. What kind of influence could Elon Musk wield politically, especially with the midterms not as far off as we may think, and also in the tech world, which is now a powerhouse in the donor game? NBC's Ryan Nobles joins us with his Capitol Hill reporting. I also want to bring in senior advisor to the Lincoln Project, Stuart Stevens, and here with me is Wired Senior's writer, Jack LaHutte. Okay, so, Jake, the internet went nuts. Group chats exploded. Everywhere I went, I overheard people talking about it, including the grocery store. Everyone's talking about this feud, right? If Musk is now out of that inner circle in the White House, is he open for political business elsewhere?
Well, that is a hot topic among my sources right now. I think the future of America PAC, if we just limit it to that with his outside spending, is pretty unclear. It right now only has about $2.2-ish million in cash on hand. And I think the speculation and the concern is, frankly, Elon could cause a lot more problems for incumbent members of Congress. And then it gets trickier with like who has the leverage between Elon and Trump. But if you're just your rank and file Republican right now looking at re-election in 2026, I don't think you love the prospect of America PAC bombarding you with ads, even if the Trump endorsement and the Trump alignment isn't part of that equation.
And we know big tech leaders threw billions behind Trump in the last election cycle, other candidates. How much weight does Elon Musk's voice carry there now?
Well, I think it's getting trickier, and this is actually indicative of one, I would say, a power vacuum that's going to be brewing going into 2028, and then some slight fissures and splintering going on with the Silicon Valley wing of the GOP, where a lot of these folks who got on the Trump train, most of whom were after the assassination and after, the assassination attempt. And after Elon Musk endorsed Trump on the day of, they had maybe some limited areas of agreement with Trump, usually crypto or various forms of deregulation. So now those folks are being forced to effectively pick sides, and that is true both for members of Congress and also for tech executives and billionaires in Silicon Valley.
So, Ryan, let's remember what blew all this up, right? Trump's mega bill that Musk then called a disgusting abomination. I think it was like just 3 or 4 days ago, feels like a year ago. What's the sense on the Hill right now after Musk threatened to challenge anyone who votes for this bill? Are members of Congress worried?
I wouldn't say they're worried today, Chris. And I think that when they're making a short-term calculation, their short-term calculation is that they need to be with Donald Trump right now, especially given the fact that Elon Musk tends to be all over the map, especially when it comes to his politics. And there's no telling that the kind of vacuum that he finds himself in today will be the same one that he's in as we get closer to these 2026 midterms. I think they're very mindful of the fact that he could get involved in some of these primaries, but they just need to get over this hill that's in front of them right now. And this is that big bill that they need to pass that really will largely be the foundation of the Trump legacy and the Trump administration going forward. Listen to how Speaker Mike Johnson explained the dynamics that he and his conference find themselves in.
Elon was a big contributor in the last election, but this was a whole team effort. I mean, President Trump is the most consequential political figure of his generation, of modern American history. He is the one responsible for that. But we all worked hard. We delivered the House majority. I traveled the country nonstop. I did over 360 campaign events in 250 cities and 40 states, and I logged enough miles last year to circle the globe 5.5 times. I mean, I contributed to it as well. All of our House Republicans did.
So the message there from Mike Johnson is that Elon Musk alone is not enough to derail the Republican hopes of holding on to the House of Representatives and the Senate, for that matter. But when you take a look at the margins, Chris, and it's only 3 seats right now, and under the current environment that Republicans find themselves in, there is very little room for error. So if Elon Musk decides to get involved in just 4 or 5, maybe 10 different House races where he provides a lot of grief for incumbent House Republicans, that could be the difference between winning or losing the majority in the 2026 elections. Right now, though, it's just too difficult to predict.
Yeah, Stuart, where some Republicans maybe see a threat, Democrats do sense an opening. Politico puts it this way: Democrats eye a villain to ally arc for Elon Musk. I mean, what would that even look like? And would voters buy it?
No, I don't think anybody wants to be near Elon Musk. I mean, 48 hours ago, he was one of the most toxic figures in American life. He had some support among MAGA and Trump diehards. He's lost that. I mean, can we just step back and think about what we've seen, what Elon Musk is really like, and what Donald Trump is really like? Elon Musk was basically accusing Donald Trump of being a pedophile. I mean, and these are the people that are making these key decisions about America's future. I mean, it's just absolutely shocking and depressing and revealing when they kind of rip off the mask. You have this guy who, by Wall Street Journal, New York Times reported heavy drug use. A guy who Wired Magazine reported may very well have lied about his status when he applied for citizenship, in which case it would be grounds for his citizenship being revoked and deported. It's just a completely dark chapter. And what you look
well, it's a dark chapter, Stuart, but the fact of the matter is, one got elected president of the United States, and one, in spite of everything you just talked about, is the richest man in the world. So where does that leave things?
Well, I think it makes you question the value of being the richest man in the world. Is that the only value? What other sort of human qualities, what sense of decency, of compassion, of basic ability to function as an adult? You know, I think if we become a society where we elevate someone to say, okay, you've made more money than anybody else, therefore we want you to run the country, I think that's a really bad place for this society to be. And there's always been wealthy people involved in American politics, but never like this. And look, I think Donald Trump won because you had an incumbent president with 40% 40% favorables in the history of America, modern politics. No incumbent party's ever gotten more than 2 points higher than that. The right track of the country was at 27. No incumbent party's ever won with it being under 45. And I don't think that should be confused with an endorsement of Trumpism. If I was Democrats here, I would just raise utter holy hell about this. Clearly, we should take steps to nationalize under the Defense Procurement Act, Starlink and SpaceX. I mean, this guy is a national security threat of the highest order. And Democrats should feast on this and take it very seriously, because it is very serious.
Well, the question is whether or not they can use that effectively, right, Jake? And because there's going to be ads that feature Elon Musk. I don't think anybody's doubting that. But I wonder, big picture, he's publicly mused about starting a third party. He put a ton of money into the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, cheese hat and all. Candidate back still lost. So are we just all waiting to see what's going to happen next and what the real influence of Elon Musk is? Or are we kidding ourselves? Anybody with that much money has influence.
Well, sure. I would counter that, though, with like, hey, if Elon wants to light a bunch of money on fire and have a third party that'll get a couple % of the vote every year, you can do it. You know, nothing stopping him from doing it.
But there's an argument to be made that in a close race, 3% of the vote could switch an election.
And, you know, this is where I think that kind of slapdash coalition the Trump campaign rather impressively put together with the Elon Silicon Valley component, the RFK Jr. sort of new age wellness, you know, that component. I think we're going to start to see this fall apart thread by thread going into 2028. And that's where it's going to come down to people like J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, who else is going to be eyeing that Republican primary electorate and who might start dabbling with a third party run. I know that Andrew Yang just, you know, had to hop on that train yesterday. And we have Stuart here agreeing with Steve Bannon about nationalizing
deportation,
SpaceX. So, you know, look where we are.
Well, wasn't it Steve Bannon, too, correct me if I'm wrong here, who suggested maybe that President Trump should consider deporting Elon Musk? All right. So, you know, Stuart, I do wonder what folks outside of the U.S. think about all this. They have a stake in this, too, a pretty significant one. Elon Musk was everywhere with Trump. He was in Saudi Arabia. They saw him at the cabinet meetings. They saw him numerous times in the Oval Office. They heard that he was overnighting in the Lincoln bedroom. What's the rest of the world to make of this and our standing in the world?
Yeah, well, it hurts it. I mean, you see someone who has terrible judgment. That's Elon Musk, and a person who took him inside the beating heart of the American government, and that's Donald Trump. So it's just one more example of why Donald Trump is so unfit to be president, and why this coalition that was put together is unsustainable. But look, when, you know, what happened here to being a shiny city on a hill? You have one guy accusing the other of being in the Epstein files. You have another that says that he's gone crazy. This is someone who both of them were just praising each other days before. Do you really feel good that one of them has all your data in his pocket and the other has the nuclear codes in his pocket? It's incredibly distressing for America and America's image.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the word accused of being in the Epstein files, because it is an accusation. Nothing's ever been proved, and Trump has denied any involvement in Epstein's criminal behavior. We're out of time, but I want to ask you really quickly, Jake, what are you watching for next in this?
J.D. Vance.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he got his paper in before midnight last night with his quick, perfunctory statement in support of Trump, but I'm watching J.D. Vance.
And we are witnessing a Beltway bromance blowing up in epic proportion all over Trump's big, beautiful bill. President Trump and Elon Musk's political partnership has completely crumbled in public view over the past 24 hours. First, it was Musk's complaints about the Republican mega bill that turned into a campaign to tank it altogether, which led the president to say this about his billionaire backer on Thursday.
But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill, and he hasn't said bad about me personally, but I'm sure that'll be next.
And this is what happened next. Musk unleashing in at least 42 X posts. President Trump responding on Truth Social, threatening to cut Musk's government contracts worth billions, as Trump allies called for investigations into Musk. Musk called for impeachment as Republicans watched in horror. Democrats got out the popcorn. And a behind-the-scenes scramble to get the two most powerful and volatile men in the world to de-escalate so far has fallen short. Let's bring in NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen and MSNBC senior Washington correspondent and co-host of The Weekend, Eugene Daniels. John, bring us the latest White House view on this. Any movement toward a truce this morning?
Yeah, we're hearing from White House officials. Kristen Welker, the host of Meet the Press, and I have been speaking to White House officials this morning. What we've heard is that there are no plans for Trump to call Musk or to talk to Musk on the phone today. Of course, that could always change. But a White House official telling Kristen that there is a desire on the part, at least of Trump's staff, to de-escalate this situation. And Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, told me that when the president left the White House yesterday, he was focused on his one big beautiful bill, which of course could be the casualty here if Musk gets the upper hand. But I think we've got Caroline Leavitt on Hannity yesterday. Let's listen to what she has to say.
The president's focus and the focus of the entire White House remains on passing the one big beautiful bill. And as your audience just saw on Friday, just days ago, the president graciously hosted Elon Musk in the Oval Office, and Elon thanked the president for his incredible leadership. The only difference between Friday and today is Elon went back to his companies, and as a businessman, he has a right to speak for his companies. But as president, President Trump has a responsibility to fight for this country.
And so obviously you could see the difference between the interests that Caroline Leavitt was laying out there. And for a long time, these men's interests coincided. Now they are obviously colliding, as you said, on an epic proportion.
Eugene, the White House press secretary seemed to suggest there, at least how I interpret it, that, this is all normal. Now he's a business guy. President Trump's the president. I mean, come on. Is this the type of fight you'd expect between a businessman and a president?
Between these two, I mean, it is, right? I think,
Nothing's normal.
Nothing's normal anymore. The thing about this relationship is it was always built on no loyalty, right? It wasn't built on a policy prescription that the two men really liked together. It was about what they could get from each other. And at this point, it seems like Elon has decided that he's not getting anything, right? She kind of gave away the game there. It sounds like they heard that when Elon got and looked at the numbers, finally got to really sit down and talk to the Tesla people and said that, things are as bad as we were talking about them on television, then that made it very clear to him that, I have to say something. I will also say it has exposed a lot of rifts, right? And not just the rift between these two men, but a rift between like the tech bros and the MAGA base, which has happened before earlier this year. The rift between people who really care about fiscal responsibility in the Republican Party, and people who really love what Donald Trump is doing, right? It is going to make the road to passing this bill not just hard in the Senate, but repassing it in the House even harder.
John, you write about collateral damage, and I think Eugene is hinting at that. Talk to us about what that collateral damage could look like.
Well, for the president, obviously, the future of this bill is at risk in the short term. In the longer term for the Republican Party, Musk is threatening not only to withhold the $100 million that he had promised to put into Trump political committees. In fact, we were told by one source close to Musk yesterday that that's already gone. That's not going to happen. But that Musk could actually spend to defeat Republican candidates. And Musk said in November, meaning potentially giving to Democrats or at least trying to harm Republicans on the ballot if they vote for this bill. For Musk, of course, he's got billions of dollars wrapped up in federal subsidies for his companies. We've already seen Tesla take a huge nosedive. I think it lost about 14% of its stock value yesterday. So a lot of money at stake for Elon Musk and the political legacy of Donald Trump, whose entire first term or second term, I guess now, agenda is wrapped up in this big, beautiful bill. A lot at stake for both of these men. And if they can't come to an agreement here, you could really see a permanent fissure in the Republican Party.
Yeah, that stock hit you mentioned for Tesla amounted to about $150 billion that was gone. Now it seems like Tesla's doing a little better today. But Eugene, are there any signs that this opposition from Musk will actually lead to more GOP no votes on the president's mega bill? Does it give Republicans cover if they don't like it?
I think it does, right? We saw this before when they talked about raising the debt ceiling and all of that during the end of the Biden term, that as soon as Elon Musk came out against it, you saw Donald Trump as candidate, and also the other Republicans feel like they could say something and come out very hard and publicly against it. I think it also just comes as, you're looking at people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who say, I didn't read the whole bill, and I don't like that you can't, this strips the ability for states to have AI regulation. Other members, other folks in the Republican circle saying, I didn't read the bill, but now. And so it comes at this interesting time. It's hard to understand, the chicken or the egg here. But I think it does provide them cover. Elon Musk is going to continue to tweet about this, to X about this, and Donald Trump is going to continue to social post about it, right? And I think the thing that Donald Trump is realizing is, strange bedfellows are great until they're too strange. And now you have the richest man in the world, who has the biggest platform, maybe a platform that is as big as Donald Trump's, the ability to get as much attention as Donald Trump, and he's against you loudly, publicly, and very personally.
But President Trump is still the president, and
Correct.
Some of his allies, like Steve Bannon, are swinging for the fences here. John, he's urging the president to investigate Musk for alleged drug use, for his immigration status, for his ties to China. What do you think? Would President Trump go there?
It's certainly not outside the realm of possibility. We haven't gotten any indication yet from the White House that is something that will be undertaken. I guess we'll have to see whether this continues to escalate. But, it's interesting. Steve spoke to Kristen Welker yesterday, and we couldn't even print some of the things that he said because they were so ratcheted up and they were so uneasy to confirm or difficult to confirm. But certainly, Bannon has a voice in that MAGA movement, and we have seen that the movement has been able to pressure the president into doing things in the past. So I would not rule it out.
I'm just looking to see, is there anything more we're hearing from these two men this morning? It's been interesting to see how quiet the social media has been on both X and Truth Social from both President Trump and Elon Musk so far this morning. Eugene, Democrats have been kind of sitting back, watching from the sidelines with glee. One Democratic Party operative telling NBC News, quote, "This is Christmas." But I do wonder, substantively or quantifiably, what does this do for Democrats?
Yeah, not much, right? Like it causes a rift within the Republican Party. It we'll talk about it for a few days, depending on whether or not, President Trump does what Steve Bannon says he should be doing. There might be some substantive stuff there. But I think I was talking to a Democrat today that said they don't need to be distracted, right? Like this is still a bill that they're against. They should still do all the things they were planning to do in order to try and at least expose those rifts even more, take advantage of this fight, but not get distracted by, the real housewives of the White House kind of thing that's happening, right? You don't need Andy Cohen to do this. This is what leadership should be doing, what they're supposed to do, keeping everyone focused, making sure that folks continue to take the fight to Donald Trump on this bill and kind of let the Elon Musk of it all happen.
John, if Musk goes nuclear, like one of his advisors told you and our colleagues he could, and if he supports, Democratic candidates. Would Democrats accept his money? I mean, is there risk that comes with that, especially after what we're seeing right now?
I mean, there's some risk that comes with that. I think what you'd be much more likely to see is money going into super PACs, that where it's not a Democratic candidate that has to accept the money, and even more than that, it probably wouldn't even be ads that are advocating for a Democratic candidate, but rather against a Republican who voted for this bill. I mean, we're a long way from that happening right now. I think the Democrats will take any support they can get, particularly if it doesn't tie them to Musk in any way that can be traced. So the way big money works in politics now, if you're Elon Musk, you can affect elections without necessarily having to shake hands with people on the other side. I think what we have to watch now is whether these, the publicly professed ghosting of Elon Musk continues from the White House and vice versa. We live in an unusual world where you tell the media that you're ghosting somebody.
I don't know what kind of world this is right now. Everything's just a mess. Jonathan Allen, Eugene Daniels, thanks so much for the conversation and your reporting.
Good morning to you. It is Saturday, June the 7th. We begin this hour with what is probably the most consequential legal development of Donald Trump's second term, which is that the president is now publicly turning on the Federalist Society, the same conservative legal group which he relied to pick judges during his first term, the same powerful group that helped carry him to power. Their picks include a majority of the Supreme Court and hundreds of other federal judges, but this brewing feud could make Trump's next wave of judicial appointments more dangerous. From the start, this was a marriage of convenience. Trump leveraged the Federalist Society's credibility to win Republican votes. The fallout spilled into public view this week after Trump lost his tariff case before the U.S. Court of International Trade. Although a federal circuit stayed the ruling the very next day, Trump was still fuming, and on Thursday he lashed out on Truth Social, quote, "I was new to Washington, and it was suggested that I use the Federalist Society as a recommending source on judges. I did so openly and freely, but then realized that they were under the thumb of a real sleazebag named Leonard Leo, a bad person who, in his own way, probably hates America and obviously has his own separate ambitions," end quote. Now, Trump owes much of his impact on the federal bench, including on the Supreme Court majority, to the longtime Federalist leader, this man, Leonard Leo. So yes, Trump's insults are out there, but even when a broken clock is right twice a day, the Federalist Society does have its own ambitions. Their loyalty tends to be to conservative legal doctrine, not necessarily to Trump. And on occasion, Federalist Society-affiliated judges have stood up to Donald Trump. Case in point, when Trump tried to overturn the 2020 election, many of his hand-picked Federalist Society-vetted judges refused to rubber stamp that effort. One Trump appointee even opened his opinion with a sharp rebuke, quote, "Free, fair elections are the lifeblood of our democracy," end quote. Since then, Trump's resentment toward the conservative legal establishment has grown, and the feeling appears mutual. As Vox's Ian Millhiser has reported, Federalist Society insiders have grown increasingly ambivalent about Trump, a shift that's starting to show at their events. Quote, "At a recent Federalist Society conference on executive power, many of the speakers denounced Trump's incompetence and warned that it would prevent conservatives from achieving lasting policy victories during this administration. Some argued that Trump's signature economic policy, his tariffs, are illegal," end quote. Now, before you celebrate Trump's break from a movement that brought us the Dobbs decision, that weakened voting rights, and that scaled back environmental protections, I want you to just think for a moment about the alternative. When it comes to Trump, the thing to remember is that things can always get worse. His feud with the one institution that still managed to constrain him is a warning sign. It signals that in a second Trump term, Trump isn't looking for ideology in judges. He's looking for fealty, which in fact is measurably worse. As my next guest, Akhil Amar, recently noted, without the Federalist Society, Trump, left to his own devices, would have tried to put a whole bunch of thugs on the bench. Just look at his latest judicial pick. Emil Bovey, Trump's own criminal defense lawyer, tapped for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. Bovey's part of a growing slate of MAGA reactionaries that Trump is putting forward. He currently works at the Justice Department, where he reportedly oversaw a purge of career prosecutors. According to a Justice Department memo obtained by the Associated Press, as acting Deputy Attorney General, Emil Bovey directed federal prosecutors in New York to drop a corruption case against Mayor Eric Adams. Bovey himself told a court the case was preventing the mayor from communicating with federal authorities responsible for immigration enforcement, a Trump administration priority. According to the Associated Press, Bovey also placed the lead prosecutors on administrative leave. Several prosecutors, including the prosecutor who'd been leading the case, a Republican, resigned in protest, saying they could not carry out Bovey's order and still pursue justice impartially. That's a quote. Ed Whelan, former Bush administration lawyer and longtime conservative legal commentator, says he has, quote, serious doubts that Bovey has the character and integrity to be worthy of confirmation as a federal judge, end quote. Former Republican Nominations Counsel Greg Nunziata called Bovey's nomination outrageous and unacceptable and urged the Senate to reject it. Even the Wall Street Journal is sounding the alarm. In a scathing editorial, they warned, quote, the president should understand that his attacks on judicial conservatives will hurt his own agenda and legacy. Mr. Trump is likely to see fewer judges retire, lest they be replaced by partisan hacks. That includes Justices Samuel Alito, age 75, and Clarence Thomas, age 76. Keep exercising daily, good justices, end quote. Keep exercising daily, good justices. A reminder of the things could always get worse doctrine of the Trump era in the form of a plea to the most arch-conservative justices on the court to stay alive, to prevent Trump from filling the bench with unqualified sycophants. Trump isn't even hiding the ball anymore. He's signaling exactly what kind of judiciary he wants in a second term, one that rubber stamps his policies. And that's probably why we haven't seen a single new federal judicial vacancy announced since mid-April, which is well behind the normal pace. In fact, Ed Whelan noted on X that one very conservative appellate judge told him as much, that they're staying on the bench because of concerns over who would be picked as a successor. Trump's effort to consolidate power is now nearly complete. Following Congress, then the executive branch, the judiciary is all that remains outside of his reach. With me now is Akhil Reed Amar, professor of law and political science at Yale University, host of America's Constitution podcast, and author of numerous books, including The Words That Made Us, America's Constitutional Conversation. Akhil, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming in for an important conversation, because this is where the viewer, who's not legally trained, needs to divorce themselves from the idea that I don't like conservative justices. You may or may not like them, but they work on the basis of ideology and precedent and the Constitution. Something different is happening under Trump.
Under Trump, too.
Under Trump, too.
Or at least threatened to happen. Yes, so our audience, I'm sure, has heard so much about the Federalist Society, and I think some of what they've heard may not be fair. The Federalist Society, yes, they're overwhelmingly conservative. They have a view, but it's a very respectable legal view. In the main, they are originalists, which means they care actually about what the Constitution itself really says, what it was originally designed to do. And we liberals can actually also believe in originalism. Our audience has been told sometimes, oh, it's always conservative. Not true at all. Last time I was here, I waved a copy of the Constitution and said, actually, the Supreme Court is disregarding this when they say presidents or ex-presidents are immune, because this doesn't say that. That's originalism.
Right.
And we're going to need originalism going forward. The Federalist Society are not Trump hacks. They are, many of them, very distinguished folks. Our audience may have heard of Leonard Leo. He's kind of the money and the power broker end. Let me mention someone else. He's the co-founder of the Federalist Society. He's the co-national chairman of the Federalist Society. Leo is the other one. He's the idea guy. He was the founder. His name is Steve Calabresi. He's a law professor. He and I co-teach together every year at Yale. And he is going to be the leading person, or one of the 2 or 3 leading people, opposing Trump on, for example, birthright citizenship stuff. Because the Constitution really does say things. It says people born in America, like me, are citizens, even if our parents weren't citizens at the time we're born. So that's the Federalist Society. They're principled. At their best, they're principled legal thinkers. They care about the Constitution. They tend to privilege it a little bit more than precedent. That's the real distinction.
Right, but that's it. Whether it's the Constitution or precedent, that's a great legal debate.
It is. A principled one.
Neither of those things are fealty to a president.
Exactly, and this one in particular. And in fact, some of our greatest judicial moments have been overruling precedent, like when Brown versus Board of Education says, this really says equal. We're going to do that, even though Plessy just disregarded it.
Right.
In the 1930s, the court actually, once again, overturned all sorts of precedents. It just made things up to protect corporations and plutocrats. So our audience members have been told, I think, 2 things that I want to push back on. Federalist Society, bad? No. Originalism, bad? No. The greatest originalist, perhaps in history, was not Robert Bork or Antonin Scalia or Ed Meese or Clarence Thomas. It was actually Abraham Lincoln. And it's hiding there in plain sight. Let me just remind you of the words. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. That's originalism. In 1863 at Gettysburg, he's saying 87 years before, that would be 1776, if you do the math, our fathers, our founding fathers originally agreed to something. They agreed to human equality. Let's do that, said Lincoln. Let's be faithful to that. He was a great egalitarian, and he was a great originalist lawyer. And so we liberals actually will do well to actually claim the Constitution rather than to mock it, and to actually say we have some things in common with people like Steve Calabrese. I'll mention one other person. Peter Keisler was another co-founder. They were my fellow students at Yale Law School when they co-founded the Federalist Society. Peter Keisler was acting Attorney General under George W. Bush. He leads the charge against Trump among thoughtful, fair-minded conservatives.
So part of the thing about the Federalist Society is it was a bit of a movement to get conservatives both in law schools and onto the bench.
But principled conservatives.
Right. And that's the distinction here. Your concern and the concern of others is that there are people that Donald Trump would think of appointing and is considering appointing who just don't seem to meet basic qualifications.
Oh, he wants just loyalty to himself,
yes.
Thugs and hacks, Judge Judy, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, left to his own devices and unchecked by a Senate, because the Senate needs to play a really important role now, especially now that he's shown his cards. Oh, yeah, you'd have the same sort of unqualified people in the judiciary that you have, for example, with RFK Jr. Okay, and it's one thing to put people in your branch, your cabinet, but we're talking about life-appointed judges and justices, so we have to be very careful about that. The Senate needs to play a much more vigorous role when confirming judges and justices. They tend to be more deferential when allowing the president to have his executive branch team.
Well, the crisis facing this country and the world tonight is the complete collapse of mental acuity in the President of the United States, the current president. This weekend, the President of the United States endorsed a social media post that says there is no Joe Biden, executed in 2020, Biden clones, doubles, and robotic engineered, soulless, mindless entities are what you see. Needless to say, Donald Trump is the only president in history who can publicly embrace and accept and believe such insanity without immediately provoking a rush of questions by the White House press corps and news organizations around the world about the sanity of the American president, which means that the insanity of the current American president is now officially taken for granted in the news media. No huge banners on the cable news network that recently devoted itself to the issue of presidential mental acuity. The overwhelming majority of the American news media has absolutely no problem now with Donald Trump saying there is no Joe Biden, executed in 2020. Donald Trump didn't actually write those words himself, but he found those words in his poison social media feed, and he decided to fully endorse and embrace those words. The New York Times remains one of the news organizations that finds that kind of behavior in a president strange, though not worthy of big front page headlines. And so the New York Times ran a story titled, "Trump Amplifies Another Outlandish Conspiracy Theory, Biden is a Robotic Clone." And here is the most important line in that story. The White House did not respond to requests for comment on the post about Mr. Biden. That, of course, would be impossible for any other White House if the president amplified, quote, another outlandish conspiracy theory. If any other president said that a previous living president is a robotic clone, that White House would not be able to simply refuse to comment. But that is how fully Donald Trump has crushed political reporting and political coverage in this country. And because he has crushed it, he can, in publicity terms anyway, get away with anything, and he knows it. Donald Trump is behaving like someone who believes he can get away with anything. If you want to rush to Donald Trump's defense, you are going to have to guess at a defense. You're going to have to make up a defense that Donald Trump himself has not offered. You have every right to believe, as a result of that single post alone, that Donald Trump is completely deranged and has no idea what day it is or what country he lives in. That is as defensible a reaction to Donald Trump's post as the notion that it's a joke. Neither one of those reactions can be proved. But what is undeniable by anyone anywhere, the still breathtaking stupidity of Donald Trump to find that post in the poisonous flow of his social media and decide that that's the one he wants to push that day. That is a man whose stupidity knows no bounds. That is the man whose stupidity never bumps into decency, which would then prevent him from doing the indecent, the stupid. In fact, Donald Trump can be counted on tomorrow to be stupidly indecent about something. And Joe Biden never appointed anyone to anything as incompetent and reckless and cruel as Elon Musk, who bid his farewell to his formal engagement of service with the Trump administration on Friday in the Oval Office, where his physical behavior gave many indications of possibly confirming the headline that emerged in the New York Times that very day. On the campaign trail, Elon Musk juggled drugs and family drama. We await an explanation of Elon Musk's physicality, including his inexplicable gazes at the ceiling and head twisting at the ceiling in the Oval Office. The Fox White House reporter, who appeared to be the master of ceremonies of the press corps in the Oval Office on Friday because he was allowed to ask many more questions than anyone else, seems to be on his way to ask about the New York Times breaking news about Elon Musk's drug use.
There is a New York Times report today that accuses you of blurring the line between...
Is the New York Times, is that the same publication?
Notice that the Fox reporter immediately stopped when Elon Musk ordered him to stop and wait. Elon Musk then went into a lying soliloquy about the New York Times, ending with a direct order to the Fox reporter to, quote, these were his words, move on. And the Fox reporter did exactly what Rupert Murdoch is paying him to do in that situation. He moved on when ordered to move on by anyone in Trump world. That is the same Fox reporter who gleefully joined in the screaming at Joe Biden or his press secretary in the Biden White House. Every reporter working in the Biden White House knew they could scream at Joe Biden or scream at the White House press secretary and not be kicked out of the Biden White House permanently or ever. And like children who know they won't get in trouble if they do it, they did it. They screamed at Joe Biden and his press secretary. And like children who know they will get in trouble if they do it, they don't dare do it now. Because Donald Trump has crushed all of that. And so Donald Trump and Elon Musk got away with another lying session without any serious challenge from a single White House reporter, not one of whom asked Elon Musk how it felt to kill children. Not one of those White House reporters covering Elon Musk's farewell from government service asked him to reply to Bill Gates' description of Elon Musk as the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children. That is Elon Musk's singular achievement in government, because Elon Musk decided to destroy the United States Agency for International Development, the agency that was feeding more starving children in the world than any other agency. More starving children in the world depended on surplus food from the United States to survive. Food we do not need and cannot consume. Food we have overproduced in this country. And Elon Musk decided to take that food away from them and let them die. And that is not news to the White House press corps. No one is counting because Elon Musk fired the people who were counting. Collecting statistics in advanced economies is relatively easy, with advanced methods relatively accurate. But in many parts of the world, the most impoverished parts of the world, statistics can be hard to come by. Not every baby gets a birth certificate. Not every baby gets a death certificate. The people who would be counting how many people Elon Musk killed by killing USAID were the very people who Elon Musk fired from USAID. So Elon Musk commits the greatest crime of the 21st century against the poverty population of the world and fires everyone who would be able to quantify for us the enormity of the crime. The New York Times reports, quote, Mr. Musk's drug consumption went well beyond occasional use. He told people he was taking so much ketamine, a powerful anesthetic, that it was affecting his bladder, a known effect of chronic use. He took ecstasy and psychedelic mushrooms. And he traveled with a daily medication box that held about 20 pills, including ones with the markings of the stimulant Adderall, according to a photo of the box and people who have seen it. He had a whole box full of drugs that he could have been using when he was taking life-saving drugs away from children. The New York Times account is about the drugs Elon Musk was taking during the presidential campaign. NBC News has not independently confirmed the New York Times reporting. Elon Musk has not actually denied a single word of the New York Times reporting. The New York Times says, quote, "We provided Musk with multiple opportunities to reply or rebut this reporting before publication, and he declined." The New York Times reporting suggests that Elon Musk took flight on a campaign stage with Donald Trump the first time he was up there because he was possibly on ketamine or ecstasy or Adderall or psychedelic mushrooms or all of the above at the same time. The Times obtained a text message before Elon Musk joined the Trump campaign, in which Elon Musk complained about the investigations of his businesses that the federal government was doing at the time. "The Biden administration views me as the number 2 threat after Trump. I can't be president, but I can help Trump defeat Biden, and I will," he added. And the rest is tragic history. The richest person in the world poured money into a presidential campaign, more money than anyone else in the history of political contributions, and he did it to end the investigations that the federal government was aiming at his business activities. And of course, Donald Trump ended those investigations, because you get what you pay for with Donald Trump, especially if you're the richest person in the world. The worldwide cruelty campaign launched by Elon Musk and Donald Trump now includes deporting people who have never committed a crime to countries where they have never lived and do not speak the language. Elon Musk seems to believe that cruelty is the antidote to empathy, which he considers a great human weakness. Elon Musk told the comedian Joe Rogan, quote, "The fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy." Abraham Lincoln did not know that. Abraham Lincoln believed he should govern with empathy. So did Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So did most presidents, some better than others. It was empathy coupled with geopolitical and public health wisdom that led President George W. Bush to create the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which saved 26 million lives in Africa alone before Elon Musk decided those lives were not worth saving.
Has anyone in the world died because of what Elon Musk did?
Listen,
yes or no, reclaiming my time. If you won't answer, that's a loud answer.
No one has died because of USAID.
The people who have died as a result of cutting off the oxygen of a woman in Burma and denying HIV/AIDS treatment to those in Africa. They are dead now at the hands of Elon Musk and his co-conspirators.
This is why I'm introducing the Rubio Act. So you focus on the one job that the Senate gave you to serve as our Secretary of State, because you are clearly distracted. Okay? After the last few months, I understand why President Trump had such colorful nicknames for you. You're obedient. You're following the rules. You will do anything the president tells you to do without regard for the law, the Constitution, America's security, or standing as a leader in the world. Unlike you, I do not fear crossing Donald Trump. I refuse to give up on these children.
Marco Rubio did not tell the truth to the committee, and the proof that he was not telling the truth is that he has changed his story after that testimony. The Washington Post fact-checked Marco Rubio's testimony, saying there is no dispute that people have died because the Trump administration abruptly suspended foreign aid. One might quibble over whether tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands have died. In his testimony, Secretary of State Rubio tried to contradict reporting from Africa from the New York Times' Nicholas Kristof. Nicholas Kristof responded to Rubio's testimony, writing in the New York Times, "Let me help Rubio with the truth. Meet Evan Anzu, a 5-year-old boy who was born with HIV in South Sudan. I mentioned Evan in a column in March from South Sudan. This was a child as precious as yours or mine. Evan's life was in our hands, and for 5 years, America kept him alive with antiretroviral medicines costing less than 12 cents a day through the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR. This was a program started by President George W. Bush and has saved more than 26 million lives so far, and it turned the tide of AIDS around the world and built enormous goodwill toward the United States. Then along came President Trump and his freeze on most humanitarian aid in January. How could a 5-year-old orphan possibly obtain medicine on his own? Evan weakened and soon died of an opportunistic infection. Marco Rubio told the House committee, no children are dying on my watch. Evan died on his watch. Evans of all ages are dying on Marco Rubio's watch, and no one is counting. And so we don't know, as of tonight, whether it's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Evans, but we know it will be. In a New York Times column titled, quote, Elon Musk's legacy is disease, starvation, and death. Michelle Goldberg reports. Brooke Nichols, an associate professor of global health at Boston University, has estimated that these cuts have already resulted in about 300,000 deaths, most of them of children, and will most likely lead to significantly more by the end of the year. This is what Musk's foray into politics accomplished. If there were justice in the world, Musk would never be able to repair his reputation, at least not without devoting the bulk of his fortune to easing the misery he's engendered. Musk's sojourn in government has revealed severe flaws in his character, a blithe, dehumanizing cruelty, and a deadly incuriosity. Bill Gates has seen starving children in Africa many, many times and has devoted his life and his billions to trying to save them, which makes Bill Gates' verdict on the current richest person in the world so important and powerful. Bill Gates, the former richest person in the world, said, "The picture of the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children is not a pretty one. And the picture of the richest person in the world carrying around his drug box of ecstasy, Adderall, psychedelic mushrooms, and then taking life-saving drugs away from the poorest people in the world is a picture only Donald Trump could have created." And with Elon Musk and Donald Trump, soulless, mindless entities are what you see. We'll be right back. And so as we come to the end of day 2 of the Musk versus Trump war over tariffs, Donald Trump, think about this, Donald Trump will be trying to fall asleep tonight, wondering when Elon Musk might be publicly calling him a moron. Something I right here have to confess to having done myself in moments of rhetorical weakness when my imagination doesn't come up with something more elevated to use as an accurate description of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's chief trade advisor, Peter Navarro, will be trying to fall asleep tonight wondering if he will serve as many days in the second Trump administration as he served in federal prison for lying for Donald Trump. Peter Navarro, you might recall, tried to get away with the lie that he did not have to respond to a congressional subpoena from the January 6th committee because he was protected by executive privilege. That was a lie. And at his trial in federal court in Washington, D.C., that lie got him convicted of contempt of Congress and sentenced to federal prison, where he served 120 days. Peter Navarro was a private citizen when he was claiming an executive privilege that did not exist. Peter Navarro now needs 42 more days in the Trump administration to match his 120 days in prison. And right now, Elon Musk is saying everything he can publicly say to get Peter Navarro fired immediately. Every day of Peter Navarro's life is now worse than the day before. Yesterday, Elon Musk's criticism of Peter Navarro was muted compared to today, when Musk's opening line of attack against Donald Trump's chief trade advisor was, "Navarro is truly a moron." When Donald Trump read that, even Donald Trump is capable of seeing how easily the name Trump could be substituted for the name Navarro in that tweet. And if Peter Navarro is truly a moron, what do you call the person who follows Peter Navarro's advice? Donald Trump has called Elon Musk a genius, and now, according to the Trump formulation, a genius has called Donald Trump's chief trade advisor a moron, and Donald Trump has chosen the side of the accused moron over the Trump-proclaimed genius. So what does that make Donald Trump? There is only one president of the United States in history who would take Peter Navarro's advice on anything. There's only one president of any country in the world today who would take Peter Navarro's advice on anything. And Donald Trump's personal genius has called Peter Navarro a moron. Even Donald Trump can figure out how Elon Musk really feels about someone who would take a moron's advice. It got worse for Peter Navarro as Elon Musk and his brother Kimball Musk, a member of the board of Tesla, joined in double-team Twitter attacks of Peter Navarro as the day wore on that included nastier words than moron that I cannot say on this program. Yesterday, Elon Musk's brother, Kimball Musk, directly attacked Donald Trump, saying, as I reported here last night, who would have thought that Trump was actually the most high-tax American president in generations? Through his tariff strategy, Trump has implemented a structural permanent tax on the American consumer. Elon Musk's brother is a wholly owned subsidiary of Elon Musk, and as a board member of Tesla, can be fairly assumed to never say a word publicly that Elon Musk doesn't approve of. And so tonight, Donald Trump is just one Musk away from being directly attacked by the richest person in the world for creating the biggest tax increase in American history all by himself. And so, as Donald Trump rests his weary head on his pillow tonight, with his hair in whatever protective device he uses for sleeping, he has to wonder, when will Elon Musk turn on me? Donald Trump knows Elon Musk is not a patient person. Elon Musk has personally lost more money to the Trump tariffs than any other person in the world. In the first hour of the stock market's opening today, another day when Elon Musk lost more money, Elon Musk tweeted, "Navarro is dumber than a sack of bricks." And then, during the afternoon session, when the stock market was sinking badly and Elon Musk was losing even more money once again today, Elon Musk tweeted, "I'd like to apologize to Bricks for calling Peter Navarro dumber than a sack of bricks. That was so unfair to Bricks." To which Kimball Musk immediately jumped in with, "A moment of silence, please, for all the bricks that have been unfairly maligned when being compared to Navarro." So, if Peter Navarro is dumber than a sack of bricks, that makes Donald Trump dumber than a sack of what exactly, according to Elon Musk? We might be days or weeks away from finding out how Elon Musk will publicly complete the sentence, "Donald Trump is dumber than a sack of blank." And so Donald Trump is desperately worried tonight. He is desperately worried about the crashing stock market, which has lost $6 trillion in value, thanks entirely and exclusively to Donald Trump, following the advice of a person called a moron by a person Donald Trump describes as a genius. And now Donald Trump is worried that the person he thinks is a genius is going to be calling him a moron any day now. And Donald Trump is worried that he will then lose access to the unlimited amount of political money the richest person in the world has been willing to give Donald Trump and willing to use in Republican politics to threaten Republicans to stay in line with Donald Trump. Elon Musk's money is the single most important new element in Donald Trump's ability to continue to hold on to Republicans' public loyalty. But that Republican loyalty is beginning to crumble thanks to Donald Trump following the advice of Peter Navarro. We all know just how cowardly every single Republican member of Congress is when it comes to anything involving Donald Trump. And so it is a hugely significant crack in the wall of Trump Republican loyalty tonight that the most senior Republican member of the Senate, Chuck Grassley, who has never been in favor of presidentially imposed tariffs before Donald Trump was elected, has introduced a bill with a total of 7 Republican co-sponsors to limit the president's ability to raise tariffs without Congress's approval. So that's 7 Republicans willing to go public against Donald Trump on tariffs, and 4 more Republicans emerged today in the Senate Finance Committee, which has jurisdiction over tariffs, taking shots at Donald Trump's tariffs during a hearing with the person who is supposed to be the president's chief international trade advisor, United States Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. Here is a sample, just a sample, of what Republican senators were brave enough to say today about the Trump tariffs.
If the purpose is to stall on negotiations in order to keep tariffs high for the sole purpose of feeding the U.S. Treasury, I oppose that.
Who pays these high tariffs? In the short, medium term, it will be the consumer. It will be the consumer. And so I'm worried about the inflationary effect. I'm worried if there is a trade war, that we're going to have markets shutting down for American farmers, ranchers, and manufacturers.
And I hope you and the president are very sensitive about companies potentially going bankrupt by these actions. Again, we want fair trade, but I hope you recognize, tariffs are double-edged sword. I would argue a somewhat blunt instrument.
This is creating some anxiety, this current tariff posture among some of my constituents. In Indiana, rural communities and export-driven manufacturers oftentimes feel the consequences, and they feel the consequences first.
Some in Oklahoma, they're asking me about exclusions and exceptions and how this is going to be handled to say, we can't buy it in America. This is the only place that's actually manufacturing it.
I also hear from my producers that the mean tariff being selected to apply to a country may not account that for rice, for example, the tariff is much higher for that particular product, and that it is not adequate to address that which is taking place.
I'm assuming this all got gamed out because it's a novel approach. It needed to be thought out. Whose throat do I get to choke if this proves to be wrong?
When the day comes, Donald Trump will personally invite Senator Thom Tillis